Okay, thank you for giving us some time today. Evangelization and catechesis of families has always been a priority for the church. It is also very true that the family is under attack by secular media and society. How can the church realistically counteract that when it is so prevalent?
Probably the best way is not to counteract. The best way is to promote. I would think so, We have what the church, what the gospel is proposing is what really is capable of filling human hearts. So, and the family is the place where human person get together, live in unity, and are fruitful. So what we have to do is to work with our families so that our families are going to be testimonies. Well, in my diocese, for example, we've been working for the last 5 years on the question of families with all the aspects possible so that we could have families, and these families are going to be examples of what, well, like the Holy Family of Mary, Jesus, and Joseph, no? And so I think, because most of the people do not understand what the gospel is inviting us to do and to be and to live. So I think, well, what we need are examples, testimonies, and this is the best way promoting family to counteract.
Catholic Organization for Life and Family. Would you mind explaining exactly what its role is, or maybe elaborating on their important role and what they're doing?
CALF was founded by the Knights of Columbus and the CCCB, the conference. And what we were asking them was exactly that, promoting family and life. We are more concerned, many people are more concerned with life than with family. But I would say that, Pope Benedict, Pope Francis, they always speak about the family and then life, because all the problems around life are in the family. So what we are calling CALF to do is truly to promote, the traditional family where, life is blooming.
I was struck by the fact that you brought up the issue of the problems that immigrants face when they come, like in both the refugees, which don't have the experience of, but I do have the experience of being a Catholic coming from Europe with very strong traditions and the processions, and to Canada, where everything seemed very cold and unwelcoming, respectfully. Is there anything in place, or are there any plans, or do we have anything in place to help people who are just normal immigrants trying to get their bearings before they're sucked into the secular jet stream, and for the refugees?
The gospel is indicating, accepting a stranger, the stranger is a brother. So that we are going to give, and we try to give, say to the people, to our people, for ourselves, but also for our people, to be welcoming. That is very, very important. And, the one you welcome is a brother. Mainly, we spoke about that because, we have a few problems with the government. For example, in the Catholic Church, there are communities who want priests, who want sisters, religious sisters, to come. And it's very, very, very difficult. So we've been meeting with people of the government, trying to explain. And we had people from Latin America, and they are still coming and so on. And because there is a need for them to come. Yesterday we were speaking about all the Christians in Middle East.
Yes.
And well, we have to insist, because we want the Christian faith to be where it started. Behind what we see, there are always different interests, financial, political, and others, you know. And what is happening in Middle East, well, it's not because of the people there. It's because of different interests from other.
I think personally, I find palliative care is very dear to me, because most of my family is in the medical profession, and there is no real need, to my understanding, as far as I can understand, for euthanasia. We can help people die with dignity. And I was wondering if you would like to elaborate a bit on the church's position.
Well, maybe not on the church tradition, but I would say that the church tradition is to respect life from the conception to the end of life, natural end of life. We just had now we have a committee, ad hoc committee on that question, and so we've been studying what do people know when we speak about palliative cares. What do the people understand? And so we see that we have to present something in parishes. This will be what our throughout Canada, and then probably in the schools, and then we'll offer that also to all those who are not necessarily Catholic or Christians, you know, because well, we have to understand well what palliative cares are, and then we have to instruct them how to have access. You know, well, studies show that more than 77, I think, % of the people would like to die at home. So we need also not only hospitalized, but also, well, services at home too, as palliative cares. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Your Eminence.
It's a pleasure.
For the 75th Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. You're talking about Catholic missionaries in Canada today. The life of a missionary in Canada can be very difficult, but it can also be very beautiful. What advice would you give to anyone who listens to you today and might be thinking?
Well, I think what I'm going to be talking about is Catholic missions in Canada, which since 1908 has been helping the missionaries and the people of the northern diocese, also the Ukrainian early settlers in our country in the early 20th century. And so I'm just encouraging people to pray for those in the home missions, you might say,
Yes.
and also to provide them with help, financial help, and also spiritual help. And I think it's very good for people who are able to work in that area, but that takes a great deal of training and particular gifts to do that.
There are many places and communities in Canada that desperately need the presence of a mission. How does the Church decide where the resources need to go? Is there a criteria?
First of all, the southern diocese are trying to help the northern diocese. We pair it up between two dioceses. And really, it's the ones who are there, they say what they need. We just don't determine that. And Catholic Missions in Canada basically responds to requests from people on the ground, so they know what is needed. And if it has the approval of the bishop, then we try to help them.
Last question. What is the difference between missionary work and the work of evangelization, which seems to be the catchphrase?
Well, I think it's the same thing in a sense, but we're called to, often missionaries in a sense, to go to distant places, and often people go around the world to spread the word and to help the strengthen the church. But we have different parts of our country. We all are really in mission work. In the particular case of Catholic Missions in Canada, is to help the church in areas where we can perhaps be of some assistance with some material assistance in their great mission that they live on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. On the 75th Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, you are going to be speaking about the ecumenical movement, I understand.
Yes, so I'll be giving a summary report on the Commission for Christian Unity, of which I'm the chair. And so this commission oversees the various ecumenical and even interfaith dialogues that are carried out by the CCCCB. And so that roughly is 13 various dialogues. And so that means the different member bishops who are members of these, and these rotate, plus other specialists. They can be clergy, religious, theologians, lay people. And so we look after like the Catholic end of that, but then there's also the counterpart, whoever is on the other side of the dialogue, whichever church it is, and of working that out. So I'll be giving a summary report on Friday morning for this past year's activity of the Commission.
We cannot speak about the ecumenical movement without remembering Jesus' prayer from the Gospel of John, chapter 17:21, that all may be one. What can you tell us about the Church's progress in this area, since the Church picked up the battle cry of ecumenism again after Vatican Council II?
Yes, certainly that a lot of this has developed after the Second Vatican Council. I always like to remember the phrase, I believe is attributed to now St. John Paul II, who said that we must dialogue in charity and in faith. The point of the dialogue is that we do look at the historical issues, the development, for example, why did breaks occur within the church, within the Christian believers and that, but also we go at it with a Christian outlook of respect and love for the other party. And the goal always is to come back to the unity that Christ calls all of us. If we all claim to believe in Jesus Christ and his gospel message, then certainly this is one of the key goals and challenges of that message, is that we need to be united in our mission, in our ministry, and in our love for Jesus Christ. And that needs to be shown to the world. We have to be an example of that to the world out there, especially the world that does not know Jesus Christ. By looking at the various churches and faith communities, they need to be able to understand something more deeply of the message of Jesus.
If you had to visualize a united church, what would it look like? And how would we get about, because I mean, the people in the trenches, the bishops, the archbishops, the clergy, you know what's going on. I think the man in the street is at best confused. They don't even know why certain churches have certain rules, and isn't it all the same anyway? So what can the layman do to help the people who are leading the movement?
And here is an area, in fact, where we might say, learn from certain other churches and faith communities, such as Protestant churches, who are very strong on the reading of Scripture, of knowing it almost by heart. And we could say the Catholic community hasn't always been so strong in the knowledge of Scripture, although I think that's changing recently. On the other hand, part of the Catholic tradition that is very strong is the liturgical tradition, the sacramental tradition. And this too can be shared with other churches that have not been strong or have not used it. Perhaps they found difficulties with it throughout history, and we need to meet with them to see what those difficulties have been, and even from our own position. And again, I think a lot of this is going through development and change to find acceptable ways that others can find acceptable to follow this liturgical sacramental tradition. It's a question of language, it's a question of concepts, of theology, of spirituality, and a lived tradition, which certainly is very strong within the Catholic Church.
What efforts are non-Christian Catholic Christian brothers doing to bridge the gap, if any?
I think it depends on which particular Christian group we're treating with. And in fact, this is part of the CCCB's ecumenical work, that we have to understand the particularities of each say, Christian group that we are working with, what is their strong point? What do we find in common with them? And what are points of difference between the two? And so again, with some churches, for example, with the Orthodox churches, the liturgical and idea of tradition is very strong with them. Other churches, say some of the Protestant churches, I think have a deeper understanding of aspects that are very important to the Catholic tradition, such as Eucharist. And we have seen over the years a change in them, also ordained ministry. Where some of the churches lost that aspect of ordained ministry, they are rediscovering that. It's going to be a process that will take a long time. And we shouldn't fool ourselves to think, well, everybody's going to be eventually, you use the term under one umbrella, as if to say they're all going to be marching in unison, doing the same thing. As much as there is diversity in human nature, in cultural groups, in ethnic groups, between countries, and that's going to be part of the picture of the Church of Jesus Christ, to be able to find unity, but also to accept diversity and how the two need to balance themselves out in an acceptable manner.
Where does the concept of evangelization? All Catholics are called to evangelize. Is there anything that could be implemented on maybe a parochial level or a parish level to try, or a person to person, try to include people in our own communities who are, but would it be by example? Is there anything being done on the floor, on the foot soldier levels?
I think the term evangelization, it is very important and key in the life of the church, but it also has various dimensions to it. So evangelization could mean going door to door as missionaries, and there's no reason why Catholics can't do that. And I know of some lay people who've been trained in particular parishes to hold a parish mission. And part of the parish mission is they find a list of the parishioners or former parishioners who will go knock on the door and ask to speak with them and try to commence a dialogue. So that is one form of evangelization. But evangelization is also found, for example, in the home, that a family, the parents, for example, need to live lives as followers of Jesus Christ, and to show that in their lifestyle, in what they do, in what they say, even what they think, and to portray that to their children. The children need to see them carry on that type of a lifestyle with their neighbors or with the strangers that may come into their lives or to their door or whatever it is. So there are certainly various ways that evangelization can take place. And again, Catholics have not always been very strong in that dimension. They look, the Protestants do that very well. But I think that has, over the years, has been changes been occurring there where people are ready to do that. So I think just to understand the many dimensions that are involved in the term evangelization, and to realize that it can be going door to door or standing on the street corner, but it's also living your daily life in a good way as a good example to others. And this too is evangelization.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.